Okay, perfect. So today, let's talk a little bit about the Australia Awards, right? So probably the biggest takeaway from this slide that I hope you take today is that the Australia Awards are transformational scholarships for international students and that they are funded by the Australian government. So important there, you'll see we've highlighted transformational scholarships. So probably what sets us out, or what we believe sets us out from most other scholarship programs, is that this program is not just about you as an individual, and it's not just about you, getting a master's degree, but rather it's about the Australian government's investment in the African continent and how we give people skills and knowledge through a master's degree, but with a commitment to making a change when they return home, right? So the Australian government funds scholarships in Africa to contribute to the development needs of the partner countries. So, in other words, the countries in Africa. Um, and this is very much in line with the bilateral and regional agreements that the Australian government shares with countries in Africa. We do it also so that we strengthen the links and people to people links and people to organization links between Australia and countries in Africa. So, study and research opportunities are provided by the Australia Awards Africa to develop the skills and knowledge of individuals to drive change and to contribute to the economic and social development of their own countries. So, like I said at the very, very beginning, the scholarship is not about the individual, but rather it's about using the skills and the knowledge that you gain in Australia to come back to your home country to make a development impact, right? So, this is the critical takeaway from this as somebody who's interested in applying for the scholarship, in that if you were successfully given a scholarship, you have an obligation to make a change in your home country when you return home from the scholarship. By that, I also infer that, when we do our selection processes, your ability to demonstrate the type of change that you can make or that you want to make and why it's important to your individual country is critical in our selection processes, right? So you need to keep that in the back of your mind as we go through these slides today. Before we go into the detail of the eligibility, I do also just want to make sure that everybody on the call is aware that as a priority, gender equality, disability, and social inclusion is a priority for us. And we want to make sure that minority groups are able to access our prestigious scholarship program, that we can also support people to succeed in not only applying for the scholarship, but if you are selected when you study in Australia, there may be some unique accommodations or adjustments that you may need as an individual. And we want to make sure that us as a program are able to support that. We also, as part of our commitment to Jessie, we need to make sure that our scholars or prospective applicants understand that it's not only about having people from minority groups participate on the program, but it's also about upskilling and capacity developing all of our applicants, all of our scholars about issues that are related to Jessie, I beg your pardon, and how you as an individual can take these skills and take this knowledge and start implementing that in your home country as well. So it's a two-pronged approach. We want to make sure that everybody can participate, but we also want to make sure that everybody that is on the program understands the importance of inclusion and understands what their unique and individual role is in terms of supporting minority groups to participate not only in the scholarships program, but in their careers, in their workplace, in your communities. And so that's why it's important for us that we discuss this, okay? When we talk about making sure that people from minority groups, those with disabilities, female applicants are able to participate, I also want to make it, very clear that we've been intentional in not only our activities and our outreach in terms of who we work with to make sure that, our message is spread wide, but also in terms of our actual selection processes and our selection criteria to make sure that our program is as inclusive as it can be. All right, so now we're going to talk just a little bit about the actual eligibility criteria. So in other words, what criteria do you need to meet in order to be able to submit an application? Now, it's very important that you just register. I'm going to go through 12 key points here. But what I need you to understand is that you have to meet every single one of these 12 criteria in order to apply for the scholarship. So in other words, if you met 11 of the criteria, but there is one that you do not meet, you are not able to apply for the scholarship. So you have to meet all 12 criteria in order to be able to submit an application. All right. So the first one is, do you hold citizenship of one of our eligible countries? If yes, then you are eligible. If not, unfortunately, you are not able to apply. We will go through the country eligibility in a moment. I'm just doing the high-level criteria as we speak now. Do I hold Australian citizenship, or have I submitted an application for Australian citizenship? If so, you are not eligible to apply. So if you hold Australian citizenship, or if you are applying for citizenship or permanent residency, you are not eligible to apply. Does my spouse hold Australian citizenship? If yes, you are not eligible to apply. The same applies as if your spouse is applying for citizenship or permanent residency. That means you are not eligible to apply if your spouse holds Australian citizenship. Am I currently serving in my country's military? So am I military personnel? If so, yes, if you are in the military, you are unfortunately not eligible to apply. Do I currently live in Africa? Yes, you are eligible. You can apply. If you are not living on the continent, you are not eligible to apply. There is one exception to this, and I'll speak about it in a moment. Okay. The sixth criteria, will I be at least 25 years old on the 1st of February 2027, right? So in other words, if you turn 25 on the 4th of February next year, or any date later than the 1st of February, you are unfortunately not able to apply. I'm sorry, I know there is a hand up, but Yasin, thank you. I'm not going to take questions at this point. We just want to get through the presentation. If there are a few minutes at the end, I will try and open for one or two questions, but in general, we are just sharing information today. And we encourage you to join the webinar in March, on the 23rd of March, if you have specific questions for yourself. Okay, so let me just lower the hand. Give me 1 second. It's just a few more people in the lobby. All right, so we have said you have to be 25 or older on the 1st of February next year. There is no upper age limit. So if you are 65, 75, and you want to apply for the scholarship, you are welcome to apply as long as you are 25 on the 1st of February next year, 2027. All right. Number 7, am I applying for a postgraduate master's degree? If your answer to that is yes, you are eligible. If you are wanting to apply for an undergraduate degree, or if you are wanting to apply for a postgraduate diploma or a postgraduate certificate, or if you are wanting to apply for a PhD, you are unfortunately not eligible for the program, right? You must be wanting to apply for a master's level degree in Australia. All right. Am I currently employed? So if you are employed, yes, you are eligible to apply. If you are not employed, you are not eligible to apply. I should clarify that by saying, we get a number of questions around entrepreneurs or owning your own business. If that is your case, you are eligible to apply. You just have to demonstrate that your business is active and that you are working full time for that business. Okay. Do I have at least 5 years postgraduate work experience in a relevant field? If yes, you are eligible. If no, you are not eligible to apply. Now, I just want to unpack this question a little bit more for you. So when we say at least 5 years postgraduate work experience, the key takeaway there is that you have to have graduated 5 years ago and have worked for 5 years. So a lot of people study and work at the same time. So, for example, they may have graduated at the end of last year, like say 2025, but they've been working for 10 years prior to their graduation. In that instance, unfortunately, you are not eligible to apply, right? You have to have 5 years postgraduate work experience. Now, the second component that's important in this criteria is that that work experience must be in a relevant field. So I'll use an example for this. So, for example, if you are wanting to study a master's of mining engineering, for example, but you have 5 years of human resources or HR related work experience, you unfortunately do not meet this eligibility criteria. So you have to have the 5 years postgraduate work experience in the field for which you are applying for a master's degree. So, in other words, if you graduated, let's say, at the end of 2020 in an agricultural bachelor's degree, you then started working at the beginning of 2021 in an agricultural related role, right? As an agricultural extension officer, for the sake of my example. And you have been working consistently since 2021. So 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. And you are looking to study a Master's of Agricultural Science. In that instance, you are eligible to apply. Can you see your undergraduate degree, your work experience, and the degree that you are wanting to apply for are all in an eligible priority sector, and therefore you are able to apply. In my same example, where you studied an agricultural degree and then you worked in agriculture for 5 years, and now you are wanting to study a international security related degree, you would not be eligible because they are not related, right? You are looking for a career change, essentially. And in that instance, you would not be eligible for the program. So your undergraduate degree, your work experience, and your proposed study must all be in a relevant field within one of our priority sectors, which I will talk about in a moment. Okay. Do I already have a master's degree, or am I currently enrolled to study a master's degree? If your answer to that is yes, you are unfortunately not eligible to apply. Okay, there is one exception to this, and we'll talk about it in a moment. But in general, if you hold a master's degree or if you are currently enrolled in a master's degree, you are not eligible to apply. Sorry, I'll take a moment just to re-emphasize that we're not going to take questions at this point in time. We have a number of slides to go through, and we just want to make sure that we get through the slides. And if there is time at the end, we will open it up very briefly for some questions. But if you have questions that we do not specifically answer today, I encourage you to join our next webinar, which is on the 23rd of March, where we will only do questions and answers, or you are welcome to contact us outside of via our inquiries. But for this session, I'll just ask you to hear me do our presentation, and once if there is time at the end, we'll try and open, but if not, then you please come and to the question and answer session. All right. So just to clarify around the master's degree or currently studying towards one, there are times when people may have started a master's degree, say they started 3 years ago and for whatever reason had to stop studying their master's. And so therefore they are not currently enrolled, but they have previously started a master's degree, but they have not finished it and they have not graduated. In that instance, you are eligible to apply. So our criteria is if you hold a master's, so if you have graduated with a master's, or if you are currently enrolled. To be a little bit technical, if you submit an application now in February for an Australia award, and we'll talk about it in a moment, it does take us some months to give feedback to those that have applied. And if you chose to enroll in another master's degree between now and when you hear of the outcome of this scholarship, if you had enrolled in a master's degree in that process, during that time, you would then become ineligible for the program, right? So you cannot hold a master's and you cannot be enrolled in one in order to be eligible for the program. All right. Do I hold an undergraduate degree? Sorry, if you forgive me, I missed one bullet point that I think is important to note. Just let me go back to number 10. We consider a master's degree based on your country's equivalency of a master's degree. So many times in Africa, you may graduate with a master's degree in your home country, but when it comes time to applying in say, Australia, for example, they may consider your master's degree not equivalent to an Australian master's degree. For us, in our criteria, if your degree is considered a master's degree in your home country, you are not eligible to apply, right? It doesn't matter about the Australian equivalency in this case. Your master's degree, if your home country recognizes that degree as a master's degree, you are not eligible to apply. Converse to that, criteria number 11 is that you need to hold an undergraduate degree, right? For us, in this eligibility criteria, we consider that it must be equivalent to an Australian bachelor's degree, right? Don't get too concerned about a direct equivalency. In general, if you studied in one of your well-known universities in your country, almost all of them are equivalent to an Australian university. There may be rare exceptions where you've studied, say, potentially in a very rural university that's not very common, to Australia. And in that instance, when we assess your application, we will make that equivalency adjustment. For the purposes of your application, if your undergraduate is considered an undergraduate degree in your home country, submit your application, and later in the process, if there was an issue and you met all other criteria and you were shortlisted further through the process, we will let you know about that issue later in the process if you pass the first stage of the assessments. All right, and then the next criteria is if you have previously held a long-term Australia Awards scholarship. So this is generally not going to be applicable to most people that are on this call today. But many years ago, the program did used to offer undergraduate degrees. We no longer do offer undergraduate degrees, but if you were a recipient of that undergraduate degree, you would not be eligible for the master's degree. If you received an Australia Awards short course, right, or if you undertook an Australia Awards fellowship, you are eligible to apply for the master's program. All right. But if you've received a long-term award, then you would not be eligible. All right. So as I said at the very beginning of this section, you must meet all 12 of the criteria in order for you to be eligible for the program, right? If, for example, you are unemployed, you are unfortunately not eligible to apply for the scholarships, and you will not be able to submit an application. All right. You must meet all 12 the criteria I have just outlined now. Okay. Then let's talk about eligible countries. So I'm sure there may be people on the call that are disappointed that their country may not appear on our list of eligible countries. I know that's disappointing. However, every year the Australian government discusses this with their bilateral agreements, their or their regional agreements, and there is unfortunately, we are not able to offer scholarships to all the countries on the continent, and so there is a process of identifying countries where we feel that the bilateral agreement is in line with where Australia has the skills and the knowledge that sets themselves apart from, or ourselves apart from, other international scholarships, and in the sectors that we believe are important and where we can make the bigger difference. And that is how the list of countries that are eligible for the program are ultimately determined. So unfortunately, if your country is not listed on my slide, and I'll read through them now, you are not eligible to apply. Okay, so excuse me. Forgive me, I'm just going to read through the list of countries momentarily. Algeria, Angola, Botswana, Cote d'Ivoire, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Guinea, Kenya, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritius, Morocco, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Tanzania, the Gambia, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So if I did not call out your country, unfortunately, you are not eligible to apply for the scholarships. Now, critical for this is that you must be living in your country of citizenship. So, for example, if you are Ethiopian, but you are living in Uganda, as an example, you are Zimbabwean, but you are living in South Africa. You are Tanzanian, but you are living in Rwanda or Mauritius, you are unfortunately not eligible. The only exception to this is if you are working for an African regional organization or if you are working for your own country's foreign ministry on a diplomatic mission in another country. So an example may be if you are Malagasy and you are currently living in Ethiopia because you are working for the African Union, then you are eligible to apply. Or, for example, if you are Egyptian and you work for your country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and you are posted to Lesotho, you are eligible to apply because those two exceptions to this eligibility criteria exist. If, for example, you are Kenyan and you are working for a private company in the DRC, you are unfortunately not eligible to apply. Okay? So the only exception to not living in your country of citizenship is if you work for an African regional organization and you are posted to another country, or you are on diplomatic mission for your country's foreign ministry. All right. Then let's talk a little bit about the priority sectors. So you must be working in and you must be wanting to study one of the following priority sectors: agriculture and food security, climate change, foreign policy and international security, gender, disability and social inclusion, mining and energy. Okay. Note, we will not consider any other sectors. What is very, very important to note here is you need to be working in that sector and you must be wanting to study in that sector, right? So, for example, you may be working for your government's Ministry of Agriculture, for example, and you apply for a Master's of Human Resources, or you apply for a Master's of Public Policy. In that instance, you are not eligible to apply, right? Because human resources is not part of our priority sectors, all right? So you must be working in the sector and you must be wanting to study a master's degree in that specific sector. The only exception to this is, for example, if you are working in climate change and you are working at the policy level and you are wanting to move and you have some work-related experience in the JETSI space. So in other words, if you are wanting to specialize in gender, disability, and social inclusion, but you are working in one of the other sectors, you are eligible to apply. Okay? That is the only exception on the priority sectors. If you apply for something, for example, like health or education or actual public policy or governance, right? You are not eligible to apply and your application will not be considered, right? So you must be applying in one of these 5 priority sectors. Now, you will see that for some countries, and I will read them out in a moment, you have to be able to demonstrate evidence of English language proficiency. So this is only applicable to you if you are from a Lusophone or a francophone country, right? So for example, no, not example, I'm going to list them: Algeria, Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, the DRC, Egypt, Ethiopia, Guinea, Madagascar, Morocco, Mozambique, and Rwanda. If you are from one of those countries, you must submit evidence of an English language proficiency, right? Again, I'm sorry, I'm not taking questions at the moment, so I will just lower your hands. Just so we can get through the presentation. If we have some time at the end, which I don't think that we will, I might open up for questions. But if not, I encourage you to join us in March for our question and answer sessions. Okay. So if you are from one of those 11 countries that I've just called out, you must provide evidence of English language proficiency. There are only 3 acceptable certificates of English language proficiency that we will accept. That is IELTS, the internet-based TOEFL test, and the PTE academic test. No other English language test will suffice, right? You must provide one of those 3. And your certificate must be valid on the 1st of January 2027. Unfortunately, if you do not have an evidence of your English language capacity, your application will not be considered. So if you are from one of those 11 countries that I've called out, Algeria, Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, Guinea, Madagascar, Morocco, Mozambique, and Rwanda, you will need to provide English language proficiency evidence. Okay? Now, a little earlier, I spoke a little bit about our eligibility criteria. There is a slight adjustment around our eligibility criteria, and this is only for people with disabilities. So if you have a disclosed disability, medically diagnosed disability, we have adjusted our eligibility in order for you to be able to apply for the program, right? So the first is that if you are someone with disability, you are only required to have a minimum of 3 years of work experience. And also, if you are someone with a disability who wants to specialize in the disability rights and inclusion skills gap area. So in other words, if you're wanting to apply for a master's degree in the JETSI priority sector, you may already be undertaking or hold a technical master's. So what I mean by that is a master's degree in another study area. So for example, in my earlier example about agricultural sciences, if you are somebody somebody with disability, you have a master's of agricultural science, and now you are wanting to apply for a master's in the JETSI space, you are eligible to apply. So that is the only instance where applicants may already hold a master's degree and still be eligible for the program. You must be someone with disabilities, and it must be evidence that you have that disability. All right. I also just want to make sure that everybody is aware that women's leadership and decision making are 2 driving forces of gender equality that we believe are achievable through education. Gender equality is a critical and integral part of the Australian government's development policy. And therefore, as the Australia Awards program, we aim to ensure equal participation and benefit to the program by both men and women, right? We want to make sure that we reach as many eligible women as we can at the promotion stage. So now where we are at this moment, and that we are able to make efforts to redress any gender disparities across the awards cycle, right? So equity of access support for women is available during the application stage, at the selection interview, and on award in Australia. So pregnant women and those with childcare responsibilities are also supported throughout the awards cycle. Okay. On our website, we have a page which is called the JETSI Hub. I encourage anybody that would like to know more about the accommodations and the arrangements that we make for both people with disabilities and for women and men to go to the JETSI Support Hub so that you can understand those accommodations. Okay. Excuse me, sorry, I'm talking so much. All right, so how to prepare and what to research for your application. So first of all, we have spoken about the eligibility criteria. When you go to our website, there is a lovely pre-assessment checklist on the website that will help you to determine whether you meet those 12 eligibility criteria that I spoke about at the beginning of this session, right? So please go to our website, do the assessment, and confirm if you are eligible or not to apply for the program. If you are not eligible, please do not submit an application. We are asking that only those that meet all 12 the eligibility criteria submit an application, right? Understand our program. So right in the very beginning of this presentation, I spoke to you about the Australia Awards being a transformational scholarship. I spoke about the fact that it's not just about you getting a master's degree, but rather it's about the change that you are able to make when you return after completing your master's degree. Please don't go straight to the application. Read more about our program, understand what it is that we are trying to achieve. By doing that, you will set yourself up to submit a better application, right? We will wholeheartedly be assessing your application on your ability to make a development impact when you return to your home country. So that's my top tip for today, is that if you do not understand the purpose of why we have the Australia Awards Africa program, and if you do not do your research to make sure that your application sets yourself apart from everybody else, your application will not be successful. And without putting fear mongering or without making it sound very overwhelming, I can genuinely say we receive probably about 100 times more applications than the number of scholarships that we are likely to have available. So in those thousands and thousands of applications, what sets yours apart from everybody else's? Why must the program look at your application further? Everything about that has to do with the research that you do before you submit your application. So that's your top tip, right? Very, very important in order for you to make a solid application. Okay. Then you also need to understand what masters you want to study. Of the thousands of applications that we receive annually, so many people pick the first degree that they find in a Google search, right? We are very familiar with what degrees come up on the first Google search that you do. And we are very familiar with the content of the courses that fall under our priority sectors. And therefore, it is very easy for us to make an assessment on whether or not you have done the research and you are correct in assuming that the course that you are selecting is the best one for your career, right? Very, very important. In a few slides' time, I'm going to show you two very helpful websites The first one is studyaustralia.gov.au, and the second one is the CRICOS website that will help you to narrow down your search around the most appropriate course for your personal circumstances, right? Do the research. Understand what it is that that course has to offer. What I mean by that is don't just look at the overall overview of the course that you are selected. Go and look to the level of the units that are available in each semester of the 4 semesters of that degree. Look at the units and determine whether those units is a skill gap that you are missing and how you can use those units when you return home to make a bigger difference than the person sitting next to you on this call. It's critical in our selection process. We assess that you've selected as your course and how relevant it is to both your statement of intent, so in other words, what it is you're going to do when you return home, and we assess it in line with your previous academic experience and your current and future work experience, right? Please do not be lazy when it comes to selecting your course. Go and do the work, do the research, okay? All right, so how do you identify what is your correct course and what is your university, right? Couple of questions you need to ask yourself. The first one is, what skills and knowledge do I need to gain? Where am I lacking in my skills in my current and my future role, right? And how will gaining those skills help me in my employment, right? So, in other words, think about something in your current work environment that is lacking. I don't want to give an example because I fear that people will use that same example, but you in your job, you know what you are currently experiencing, what those constraints are, and the skills gap that you feel you are facing in order to deliver on something in your own work experience or ultimately in your future jobs. Now, when I say future jobs, I don't mean your future job 20 years down the line when you become the Minister of Agriculture. I mean, in the next 5 to 6 or 7 years, right? What skills do I need now in order to improve the situation in my home organization, community, or sector? That is how we will assess it, right? And then you also need to, like, what are my short and long term career goals? Depending on your career, what type of course you select will be different, right? So, some of the questions that might help you in determining this. Do you want a degree that is very focused in one area, so a very specialized degree? Or would you prefer one that allows more flexibility? There are more electives and you can be more strategic about which courses you want to undertake. Please be aware that there are examples of, say, for example, if you wanted to do a Masters of Climate Change, there are very specific Masters of Climate Change courses in Australia that you could study, or there are very general Masters of Climate Change that you could study. You need to decide what is best for you in your career and in your future job prospects, right? Do you want a degree that incorporates a research project? Be very, very careful about selecting this, particularly if you are not working in the academic space, right? If you feel it's critical for your work, then by all means go ahead and select it. But you need to be able to demonstrate why you are selecting a research project. Without preempting your answers or dictating how your application should go, I can confirm that almost all of our scholars are generally taking a master's by coursework because of the nature of their jobs and what it is they need to do when they return home. You can, by all means, select a master's by research, but then you need to demonstrate why it's critical you need to do that research, right? Do you want a degree that includes an internship? What does the university offer in terms of those internships, right? You also need to know, like, do I meet the entrance requirements of the course, right? Focus on the course content. This is so critical. Please do not consider the ranking or the prestige of the university. When you go to the Cricos Code website or the Study in Australia website, any master's degree that you select from that research is equivalent to another master's degree on that same list, right? Don't necessarily think, well, I must study at University A because they appear higher than University B on some world ranking of universities. Australian universities are prestigious in their own right. Any university that you pick in Australia is prestigious enough for your degree. I can also confirm that some universities specialize in specific areas, whilst other universities specialize in other areas. So don't choose a university because it's the one you know, or because your high school friend said that they studied in this town, and so therefore you need to study in that town because you have a personal reference. Do the research and pick the course that is most suitable to your individual needs. Take into consideration where you want to live, but choose a university based on the course content rather on the fact that you know somebody that's studying at University C. All right, just very briefly, I want to take you through the Cricos codes to help you in part of your application. So if on the very bottom right-hand side of my screen, you will see there's a blue block that says Cricos code, and there is a number. It says 074945E, right? You will not be able to submit your Australia Awards application form if you do not have that Cricos number for the course that you are wanting to study, right? So the system is set up that it will recognize that Cricos code and then let you proceed. If you do not have that Cricos code, you will not be able to submit your application. All right? So first things, you navigate to www.cricoseducation.gov.au. You go to course search, right? And you'll see there are some data fields that you can enter, and you type in, for example, the course name, agricultural science. Here, when you do that, I would be a little bit more vague than just typing agriculture, because you will get a full, very long list of things. So be as specific but general as you can to make sure you get a bucket of courses that are available to you in that sector as such, and that you are able to pick the correct one. I beg your pardon, sorry. Then you click on Start Search, and you will see a whole list of courses come up in the in your search, right? And and then it's where you do your research. You will now see there is a Masters of Agricultural Science all the way through here. You can see there are 2 pages of courses that you can select from. We've just taken a screenshot of the one page, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different 5 universities courses at different ones that you could potentially pick to study from, right? When you click on the course, the website of the university will appear there, right? Take down the Cricos code number, okay? Remember to take down the Cricos number for the course, not the institution. So this 00126G that you see here, you see it says Cricos provider code. That is the wrong code. You want to take the Cricos course code. This is the number you will need to submit on your application form, right? So you will type in your application, the Cricos code, and on the university's website, you will type in Master of Agricultural Science. This is just one of the universities, and we're just using it as for demonstration purposes. and you will go and learn more about the masters that you have selected. See here, it says course structure. Go into the course structure, right? And then read more about it. Go and look at the units and go and look at what you would be studying if you selected that that course as the one that you want to apply for, right? Make sure that the units are relevant to those skills that we spoke about earlier that you are lacking and that you want to use when you return home, right? You will do this for all the courses that you were able to identify. So if I go back to the previous slide, you would go look at the University of Tasmania, you'd look at the University of Queensland, University of Western Australia, Charles Sturt, the University of Melbourne. There will be more on this specific one. This is just what's on our screen for me to show you at this point in time. All right, so once you've identified the course that you want to study, you can then start your application, right? I will show you in a moment how you do that, but you need to know what course you want to study before you progress through your application, right? There are documents you must submit as part of this application: your passport, your degree certificate, and your academic transcripts, your CV, an employer referee report, and an academic referee report. Now, your employer referee report is critical, right? Because you need to be able to demonstrate, because we have that criteria about currently being employed. The exception to this is somebody that is working in the in the private sector or civil society, where it may not be comfortable for you to go to your current boss to ask for that referee report. In that instance, you would go to your previous boss, your last workplace, and go get that employee referee report, right? Your passport, it should be valid, but if it's expired, upload it still. We will not accept any other evidence of your identity, right? It needs to be consistent and it needs to be your passport. A lot of people put their personal or their country's identity documents. That is not appropriate. You need your passport. Your degree certificate and transcript. Please make sure all transcripts for the full 4 years of your undergrad are uploaded. In many instances, your transcripts may be in a foreign language. That is no problem. For the sake of this process, you can upload your degree certificate or your transcripts in the language in which the university issued it to you. Your CV, this must be in English, right? And both your referee reports must be in English as well. There is a template on our website that will allow you to use if you want for your referee reports. Otherwise, just a standard referee report that is common can be used, right? And then for those 11 countries that I spoke about earlier, you must upload your English language proficiency. All right, so what constitutes a good application? A clear link between your current work experience, the course, your choice of course, and what you intend to do when you've returned home. We've spoken quite a bit about this. We've spoken about the fact that your course choice must be correct, right? You need to be able to demonstrate what skills and knowledge you want to learn in Australia, why you want to learn it, and how you will use it when you return home, right? Wherever possible, to have the support of your supervisor or your employer makes a long way to making a good application, that it's complete, right? That you have all the supporting documentation is attached and you do not submit without all the documentation. If you submit an application without all the documentation, your application will be ineligible, right? You must submit all documentation. All right, and then lastly, please make sure that your application is true, that it's accurate, and that it is your own personal work, right? Copying somebody else's application using AI-assisted technology or somebody else to write your application is not allowed, right? You will not, sorry, I'm just lowering some hands here as we've already gone over time. So I don't think it's going to be possible to answer questions, but let us finish the presentation, right? So the use of AI assisted technology, you are not allowed to generate content from ChatGPT or from Copilot or any other AI technology. You are not allowed to have them write your application for you. You are allowed to use it, say, to correct your spelling or to correct your grammar, but only after you have generated that content by yourself. I guarantee you that we will be checking that, right? Okay, then the very last thing is how to apply, and then we are done with our presentation. The first thing is go to our website, right? Visit Australia Awards Africa website and complete the pre-assessment checklist, right? And then it will tell you whether or not you are eligible for the program. If you are eligible for the program, you will then navigate to the website that will allow you to submit an application, right? The DFAT Oasis website, you will automatically be redirected to that website. You will then need to register your details and you'll need to wait for a confirmation email before you progress your application. So you will register very briefly a username and a password, and then the system will send that to your email. You will click on that email to confirm your profile, and then you will be able to complete your application form and you'll be able to upload your documents. Once you have registered your profile and you've started your application, you can save the application form and you can come back in 2 days' time or in a week's time if you got to a place where you needed to think a little bit more about your application or whatever the case may be. You then would be able to go back and make changes and do everything that you need to do in order to actually submit your application, right? Once you've clicked submit and once you have submitted your application, you will then no longer be able to make changes to your application. So once you click on that submit button, make 100% sure that you are accurate in your submission, right? And I just want to re-emphasize that applications are already open and they will close on the 30th of April this year. I beg you, I implore you, please do not wait until the last week of April to submit your application, okay? You will not be able to, no, let me rephrase my words. There is a huge demand to submit applications at the end of the process, and it becomes very difficult. The system becomes slow. Some people actually miss the deadline because the system has taken so long to submit your application. And in that instance, you may miss the opportunity. So the earlier you are able to submit it, the better. I remind you that that's the 30th of April. 2026 that applications close. And I wish you the best of luck in your application process. If you have any queries, please first go to our website. All the information that I've shared with you today is there. We will share, there is a frequently asked questions that is very helpful as well on our website. Use that as a resource to help you prepare for your application. Okay. If you are not able to find the information from our website, you are welcome to then email us at our inquiries website. That information is also on our website. So we will be able to answer your questions if necessary. All right, I just want to pick up on my screen. If you give me 1 second, I want to show you our next information session slides, information session. So on the 23rd of February, we'll be having a session for disability inclusion and support for people with disabilities. On the 9th of March, we will have one for gender equality and support to female scholars. And then on Monday, the 23rd of March, Tuesday, the 7th of April, and Monday, the 20th of April, we will be hosting a question and answer information session as well. By that, I mean I will not do the presentation that I've just done, but rather we will open the chat function and we will let people raise hands and we will answer questions that are relevant to everybody that is on the call. Please go back to our website. This information is available there. Take your time, do your research, and submit a great application for us. It's at this point that I say I've already gone 6 minutes over time. I'm sorry. I will be better next time. I will talk faster so that we don't go over time again. Melvin has also just put some information there for you if you need it. And I say good luck. We look forward to receiving your applications and we hope to see you on one of our future webinars. Thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate your time and we hope that this session was useful for you. Once this is available, we will upload it onto our YouTube channel so that you can go back and watch it again if necessary. All right. Thank you to everybody. We appreciate your time and I'm going to end the presentation now. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.